Good evening. I am Reverend Sherry L. Jackson, based in Alexandria, Louisiana. And we are continuing our study tonight through the book of Genesis. And tonight we are on chapter 37, and we are going to take another turn in our overall narrative. We started this journey, of course, with Abraham and God calling Abraham to leave his country, to leave his kindred, to leave everything, to go to a place that he was going to show him, that he was going to be the father of many nations. Well, that presented a problem because Abraham was basically impotent and his wife was barren. Yet God promised that he was going to use them. And through all of their dysfunction, through all of their craziness, God did just what he said, produce Isaac, which produced Jacob and Esau. Well, we understand and we remember their fight. And then Jacob has 12 sons by 4 women. Now, what can be more dysfunctional where one man having 4 wives that produce 12 sons, and yet God still used them. So tonight we're going to begin with Genesis 37, and we are going to introduce introduce Joseph. And whenever you see, as we do in Genesis 37, Genesis 37 and 2, when it says, these are the records of the generations of Jacob, that indicates, remember, that this is a new section, that some new characters, a new storyline is going to be introduced. Now, it talks about these are the records of the generations of Jacob, but actually from chapter 37 through the rest of the book of Genesis 50 is going to focus on Joseph. It talks about the generations of Jacob because it is Jacob's family, but the chief character is going to be Joseph. And so that's where we're going to focus, and it is going to take us through the end of Genesis. Now, you remember last week, if you were with us or if you listened to the video, we dealt with Genesis 34, dealing with the rape of Diana and how the brothers took revenge at Shechem and wiped out a whole city. And if you have not looked at that, I will just ask you to take some time to go through chapter 34. I did not want us to miss that because of the storyline, and a lot of times in our churches and Bible studies, we do not talk about what we call sensitive subjects such as rape, sexual assault, and things of that nature, and many in our congregations have had to deal with that. So tonight we begin with Joseph, and we'll take a look at Joseph's life and his character, and we'll see how God built his character into a man. When this story starts out, Joseph is around 17 years old. And so God is going to have to shape him, and he's going to shape him to be a model of integrity. He is going to exhibit faithfulness in serving well. And in the end, when Jacob, I don't know why I keep saying Jacob, when Joseph had the opportunity and he had all rights. He could have taken revenge on his brothers, but he did not. He showed grace. He showed grace. And it's going to be an example for us of how to handle those who have wronged us. So let's look at some of the key points, themes, and motifs. Now that word motifs means patterns. What are some of the patterns that we're going to see in the story of Joseph? Joseph is a central figure in the Bible, and he is the central human figure in the Old Testament. Now, Moses is credited for writing the first 5 books of the Bible, and Abraham is given a lot of credit for being the father of faith and kind of like getting this thing started. But Joseph is going to be the primary figure in the Old Testament because it is through Joseph that this nation is going to form, and it's all going to start with how his brothers treated him bad, but God turned it around for his good. And we have heard all kinds of sermons from the pit to the palace. We've heard sermons titled Dream Snatcher and things of that nature. We're going to see how those things come to play. And so Joseph is a central figure. He stands out above Israel. Now, Israel, remember, is the new name for Jacob. Remember, God changed Jacob's name to Israel. And Joseph is going to even outshine his daddy, which is also going to be a problem. You're talking about a dysfunctional family. Abraham's family is dysfunctional. And we had this celebration at home this weekend, and my brothers and I always talk about, they have that show on Tyler Perry show, Meet the Browns. And we say, well, no, come to Mooney Avenue and really meet the real Browns. So no family is without its dysfunction. I don't care how we try to perpetrate, I'm going to say, we all have our own set of dysfunction. But when we start to look at Joseph, we're going to see that out of the tribes, no tribe comes from the name Joseph. And that's the same thing as Isaac. You won't see any tribes named after them. And Joseph did not get any of the land. And we're going to see that when we get to that part. It's a little bit later on, but these are some things, some key points that we need to know about Joseph. Also, Joseph rises to prominence in a foreign land. By the time Joseph comes out of the pit, so to speak, he's going to be in a foreign land. He's going to end up being in Egypt. And so what God shows us through this is that it's not so much about a geographic location. You cannot place God in a box to say that God only works here, that God only works in Louisiana, in the United States. God only works in one place. It's not about the geographic location, but it's about God's faithfulness, his faithfulness to the promise to Abraham. So it does not matter where we are or what we have gone through. If God has given us a promise, he will fulfill it no matter where we are. Joseph has no, now you see that word Toledot, that means that he has no genealogy kind of like that bears his name. So if you see in verse 2, it says, these are the records of generations of Jacob, and then it immediately goes to talking about Joseph. You would think it would say these are the generations of Joseph, because the storyline is going to focus on Joseph, but it tells us about Jacob's descendant, which Joseph was. Now, if you have any questions, remember that you can ask them by chat. You can send it by chat, or you could stop me and I can see that you want to talk and ask the question. We are in Genesis 37. We are in Genesis 37. And so if you are not on mute, please make sure that you have that you are on mute. All right. Okay. So we're on, again, chapter 37. This also, when we talk about Joseph, we will be talking about, it's not so much about obtaining the kingdom through the birthright. Remember, we have talked throughout these chapters about that birthright. Those who thought they would have got the birthright didn't get the birthright. The whole Jacob and Esau thing was about the birthright, and the person supposedly to get the birthright did not. So it's just been one crazy thing after the other. Do we have any questions? Okay.
No.
Okay.
I'm just trying to get my hand down.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So even when we're gonna see that Joseph goes, everything that has happened to him coming out, him having to deal with that Pharaoh, he says that it is not in me, but God will give Pharaoh an answer of peace. In other words, Joseph recognized early on that it was not about him. It was about God getting the glory. And so he references everything back to the glory of God. And Israel was saved despite their disobedience. Now, I know we like to send people to hell for a whole lot of things. But if that was the case, Abraham would have gone, his whole, Jesus would not have been able to come through the line of Abraham if God was about sending people to hell because of their them doing things that they're not supposed to do. We want to send people, oh, you're going to hell for this, you're going to hell for that, you're going to hell for this. But at the end of the day, God, which is the reason why he had to send Jesus, because nobody would have made it. But Israel was saved despite their disobedience, and it was not all because of their own faithfulness. They had some problems, but God still saved them because he had chosen them for a specific task. So let's look at Joseph's character. Joseph is one of the few people in the Bible that scripture says almost nothing negative about. Everything was favorable. God used Joseph as a type or a model or an example of what integrity looks like. His greatest single characteristic was he had absolute faithfulness to God under all circumstances. Now, I know that you've already read the story of Joseph in Genesis 37 and beyond, and to know that if it was anybody who could have taken revenge, it would have been Joseph. But Joseph remained faithful to God under all circumstances. And it is through this that God worked to exalt him so mightily. He never complained, he never compromised, and as a result, Joseph never lost his power before God. God used him as an example, and later on we're going to see that he was a type of Christ. Remember, I tell you that he was an example or a foreshadow of the work that Christ was going to do to save his people. Is everybody with me right now? Any questions, any comments right about now?
Well, I guess you just kind of answered what I was going to say, because just looking at this, where it says he never complained, he never compromised, he would have to have God's mighty hand on him to be able to withstand all of that stuff. Because when I think about everything that we go through in life, you know, it's hard to not complain, or, you know, to never compromise. I find it, you know, it gets better as you go on and you have a more intimate relationship with God. But I always say it has to take some divine, I mean, it has to be some serious divine things going on to keep people that straight.
Certainly. And today, you know, we have the Holy Spirit. And again, remember that they did not have the Holy Spirit as we do. But it would definitely take the Holy Spirit to get us to at least think right if we don't always do right. Was there someone else who wanted to say something, who was trying to get in?
Good job. It's going great. I'm enjoying being here.
Okay. So, go ahead, Fred.
I agree with what Gloria said.
What specific part?
It takes a whole lot not to complain and be negative. Shucks, you want to go off on folks.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say something about what she said, Sherry. Just to be scared sometime about the things that are happening in the world today. Like I went to the movies on Saturday, and I was telling a friend that I had gone to the movies, and she was asking me, was I not scared to go to the movies in light of what had happened, you know, in the movies, you know, in the last couple of months. And I told her, no, I wasn't, because I just had to have faith. We couldn't stop living because of the things that were happening, you know, and that's really how I felt, you know, about it. We can't stop living because things just can happen to us riding down the street. When it's our time to go, it's our time to go.
You are certainly so right about that. You just have to keep living and place your faith um, in God. And so, which is one of the reasons why I always felt, and I like to talk about this dysfunction, because a lot of times we, especially new believers, feel that they have to have everything together. And we do a bad disservice in the church, also in our teaching, in our preaching, when we act as if there is no dysfunction, that everything is hunky-dory, is peachy cream. And the fact that all these biblical characters had everything together. Well, through this study we could see that Abraham's family did not have it together, and the apple did not fall far from the tree. It started with Abraham, and it just kept going to his son Isaac, Jacob and Esau scenario. Then the sons go and tear up a whole city at Shechem. And now we're going to see with Jacob's family, the brothers will put this younger brother, Joseph, in a pit because he told them about a dream that they were going to serve him. And Jacob's family did not enjoy the blessings of unity because from the home it was divided. There were two wives, the first two wives were rivals, okay? And then you had two concubines. So you got one father, 4 different mothers, and 12 sons. We got the ingredient for multiple problems. Now, have you ever just, I know we read these stories, but have you ever just thought about it? There is something in the Bible to meet every need or every situation. It might not be just like it. No, they're not talking about crack cocaine in the Bible, but there are still substances that people would have used that would have gotten them, as they say, all off kilter. And so through these stories, we don't have to think about, oh, our family was just so I can't be anything because my family. Oh, who could be more dysfunctional than Abraham's family? Did somebody want to chime in?
Well, I think that's why I'm grateful for getting additional input about things. Because when you talk about dysfunction, I think a lot of us really don't get it, because many of us, when we come to Christ, and like you say, we do a disservice to new believers because they think they got to have everything all together, and that, for lack of a better phrase, they have to be straight, no chaser, and that they can't make any mistakes. But as we began to really read and get deeper into it, we get a more enhanced picture of what really has gone on throughout biblical history. And that it's okay to let people know that, it's okay to be where you are. Maybe we might have been in that same place, but we have to help them come along and not, down them and condemn them and all those things that will actually make them run away from the word instead of to the word.
Yes. Thank you so much. That is a very valid point. When we make things so high and people can't say, oh, I can't reach that, so I'm not gonna even be bothered. I'm just gonna give up right now. Okay. So as we continue, why did the brothers hate Joseph so much? Genesis 37 shows a family that knew the true and living God and yet sinned against him and each other by what they said and did. The presence of Joseph in the home didn't create problems, it revealed them. In other words, you know, sometimes we have situations in our Hamlet families, or we have that I always say, you know, that uncle that we keep in the back, or that we don't want to bring out because, you know, we want to make if he comes out, then he's gonna expose what the family is really like. Uh, and it gives the impression that everything is all right until this person comes out and you know, kind of like exposes stuff. Well, this is kind of like the situation. Joseph didn't cause the problem. It just revealed what was already there. Disruptive forces were already at work in this family, but God in his grace overruled for their good. And even in Romans 5:20, it talks about where sin abounded, grace abounded more. Where there was sin, where there is sin, God's grace supersedes that. It takes care of that. And so this family, we're going to, as we continue on, they're going to be so mad, so jealous, and they're going to try to get rid of their brother. Joseph's story is introduced in 37, and his main thing was his dreams. His parents, his siblings will bow down to him. His brother sold him into slavery, and if you read, you know, 37, this is kind of like in a nutshell. This was a violation of the Mosaic law. Now, they didn't have the law. Moses had not given the law. God had not given the laws. And remember, these stories, when Moses writes the Bible, the first 5 books, he's kind of like looking backwards. It wasn't like he was there for all of these events, but he's taking a look back as he's writing. Okay, so he was sold into slavery. He was sold to the Ishmaelites. Remember, this is coming from Ishmael's family. And who is Ishmael? Somebody please tell me. Who is
Isaac's
Ishmael?
brother?
Huh?
Was it Isaac's brother?
Isaac's brother. That's exactly right. Isaac's brother. This is the brother by who by Hagar. So remember that Isaac, God still blessed Ishmael, even though he wasn't the promise. He still had a lineage that came after him. So he told Jacob, he told his daddy he had been devoured by wild beasts, and he was eventually sold to an Egyptian officer of Pharaoh. And he rose to prominence in his master's home. He was betrayed by his master, which was Potiphar's wife. He was in prison, and he is he's put in prison, but he never touched his wife, Potiphar's wife. So he rises to prominence in prison. He became known for his ability to interpret dreams. People would come in and get him and said, you know, to interpret dreams for them. And he realized a dream that he interpreted, that there would be a famine in all the land. And it's through this famine that he's going to have to get his brothers and his family, that his brothers that put him in a pit to die, is going to have to come back, and Jake, through Joseph, is going to have to provide for them. And that's where that You know, he had all rights and privileges. He could have really let them starve if he wanted to. But because of who he was and how God was using him, he extended grace to them. He gave them something that they did not favor, that they did not deserve. So he becomes Pharaoh's, when he ends up in Egypt, flees to Egypt, he becomes Pharaoh's chief of staff. He becomes the chief governor of Egypt. And this appointment occurred when he was 30 years old. He was married once, and he had only one wife, which was contrary to the kings of that time. And he had two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. So even though he did not have, he didn't himself get land, but his children each got half, which would have gotten his part. Okay? So there was famine in the land. Joseph foretold what he told actually came true. People from all over the area came to Egypt for grain, including his brothers. And after a series of events, Joseph becomes known to his brothers. And what does he do? He embraces them and forgives them. Let's just stop right there. Just think about those who have wronged us. And we talked about this a little bit when we talked about Jacob and Esau reconciling. How did and they came together, and Joseph just about does the same thing with his brothers. When they needed him the most, he did not dismiss them. He embraced them and forgave them. How many of us have had people to do us wrong, and we have embraced them and forgiven them? I'm one to say that this is not an easy thing. It is at least for me, it is a process, because the sting, you still feel the sting, and then when you think that you've gotten it all over with, you know, something happens and it rises up again. And that's certainly an act on this side of the cross of the Holy Spirit that helps us to that it doesn't sting as bad as it once did. Anybody have any comments on that? I want to share anything on that part?
Yes, I do. I find that, you know, it's easy for me to give people the benefit of the doubt.
Mm-hmm.
But if you keep on doing things to me, and I've given you the benefit of doubt, eventually there becomes my heart gets a little bit hard towards you. And, you know, you kind of just like say, I'm done. You kind of like cut them off, but that's not what we're really supposed to do. But, you know, that's how I deal with things like that. It takes a lot to really make me go there, but I can't. I'm not, you know, it's not something that I should do, but I know that that's just how I am in those situations. Because
Michelle,
I'm so angry.
why are you laughing?
Because I just put my arrow on the unmute button, because I was surely getting ready to say, clearly, I am not there yet in every aspect. I mean, in some situations, I can be like, oh, you know, keep it moving. Okay, I forgive you, keep it going. But I'm like Denise. Now, if we keep going through stuff, and every time I look up, you know, there's this, there's that, there's this. Now, I just told my pastor a couple weeks ago, I don't have room for drama. My tolerance is real low on, you know, people hurting me and drama and craziness. It's just real low. I just don't be bothered. And I know that's not the right attitude to have. And then if you get to the point, for one, I'm not like I'm not a person that's like really allowing you into my deepest circle where you can even hurt me. So if I allow you in there and you hurt me, that first time I could get past it, but the second time I'm like, So that is definitely a work in progress for me. I even have a book that's on forgiveness, and how we're supposed to do it the biblical way, but I'm just not there yet.
Okay, well, thanks for your honesty. Now, anybody who's there yet, and you can tell us and help us to move forward.
I'm not sure if I'm there yet, but I'll tell you where I am.
Okay.
I've realized that unforgiveness cost me more than it does the person who did that damnable thing.
Okay, how so?
Well, to forgive is to set a prisoner free, then to realize the prisoner was me. My peace of mind and my thinking is my source of wealth. And as a result, I want my mind free, my spirit free. So I'm definitely going to forgive anybody that would try to stop the flow of that. So I fight to forgive.
Okay, let me press that a little bit.
Please.
So is forgiveness in that part a selfish act?
Yes, in part it is. Yes, because I got to love myself first before I can love anybody else. So it is selfish.
Okay. Thank you for your honesty. Anybody else?
So I have something to, I guess, say about that or ask a question about that.
Yes, ma'am.
I've talked to a couple friends and we go back and forth on the whole forgiveness thing. And I am the one who, in my opinion, I think I forgive people just fine, but I really don't fool with you anymore. And so I've been told, well, that's not really forgiveness. I think it is. I mean, I really don't care about the issue once I say, okay, it's cool, but I really am just like done with you. What's wrong with being done with people when they've shown you who they are? Because I don't get upset about the old issue. It never resurfaces. When I see the people again, it's just like I just kind of don't know them, or we were never friends or acquaintances or anything. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm not really sure. Is it half forgiving them or not? Because I really am never angry about the issue anymore.
Okay. Anybody want to help LaTanya?
Well, from what I've been told is that it's not really like true forgiveness. You're cutting them all the way off because they hurt you or whatever you've done, to never let them into your space again. So it's like you may not feel like you have an issue with it, but in all actuality, you still do, because you can't deal with them anymore.
Oh, I guess what I feel too, Denise, is it's just really easy for me to just walk away.
Mm-hmm.
It just is. I mean, no matter what the situation, it's really easy for me to say, okay, well, done with those people. Not want to fight them on it, not want to curse them out, don't want to do any of that. It's just so easy for me to just kind of dust myself off and say, okay, so I don't know.
But I guess I always try to think about, I know this is cliche-ish with a lot of people, but what would Jesus do? I have to always put myself in their situation, say, what if he had to just walked away from me and was totally done with me? Where would I be?
Right.
I think there's a difference between forgiveness and restitution or restoration.
Mm-hmm.
once somebody has offended you or hurt you, then you got the element of trust to deal with. And that trust has to be rebuilt or re-earned. And so until that happens, I think I would keep a little distance between me and that person too. Maybe not cut them all the way off, but let them earn the right to get back to that place if they ever get back to that place.
Okay. Anybody else?
Well, this is just the thought process. I mean, she said that she actually forgives them and it doesn't, bother her or doesn't come up anymore. And then, Frederick, you just said that it's the difference between forgiveness and restoration. So I guess I'm pondering this in this aspect. Everyone that you forgive, do they have to be restored to that place? I mean, because my whole take is I go back to what Dr. Maya Angelou says in terms of when people show you who they are, believe them. And if they show you nothing but negativity or, create some havoc or something, and it's a situation that they've involved you in and you forgive them, how come, how come they have to be back in your inner circle again? I mean, you've forgiven them, you're pleasant to them, hey, how you doing? Keep it moving, but they're not coming over for dinner anymore. You're not inviting them out to the movies, but you have definitely forgiven them. So do you have to have a restored relationship because you've forgiven? I guess I'm a little confused on that one.
And that was, I think, my exact question, Michelle. Yeah.
Okay. Boy, y'all on it tonight. Reverend Greenleaf, and y'all talking all kind of ways. Anybody else wanted to add to that before I
just want to add, Tara, I agree with what Frederick was saying too, but the thing that came to mind for me is a place where you can't control what the other person does or what they've done, but you can forgive them. And I think that you still have to consider that you have to heal from whatever that was. The other thing that I would say that I think is interesting that nobody brought up is that the shoe has been on the other foot. I think we've all been in that position where we someone else, whether or not, and that we have perspective too as we try to be better in this.
That's right.
Okay. Well, good discussion. Anybody else before I
didn't get all of that because she was fading in and out.
I think that Tara, the gist of what she was saying is that you may have forgiven them, but you still sometimes need the time to heal from whatever the act was. Was I kind of like? Is that kind of like it, Tara?
Yes, could you?
That even though you've forgiven them, sometimes you need time to heal from it. It doesn't automatically, the heart doesn't automatically just heal because you've said the words. That sometimes you do need the time. And I always, with my vets that I talk to and counsel, and they talk about, they don't know if God has forgiven them, or they haven't been able to forgive themselves, especially when it comes to having to, be in combat and have killed people. And I often point to this scar that I have on my arm. And I often tell them, when I look at that scar, I know exactly what happened, when it happened, how it happened, and why it happened. But this scar doesn't look as bad today, even than when it first happened. And it does not hurt me the same. It does not hurt me at all, but I still remember it. So when people say forgive and forget, for me, for Sherry, it does not mean that I have not forgiven you, even though I may remember, I know exactly how it happened, but the sting of it does not do me the same. Um,
Okay, then, so my question is it okay to just say, okay, I forgive you, and I just wipe you, because it could be friends, it could be family, it could be anybody.
it is for me, for Sherry, it is a process that we may not ever get back to where it was just because. But the sting of it, I can still be cordial to you. I might ever, you might even come to my house. I invite you to a big life event. But there's still time, over time, you may get back. You're going to be a new person, and they're going to be a new person. You're not going to even be the same people as you were when that event happened. It could be better than what it was, not necessarily where you were. And then again, you may never be in that position again where you are back lovey-dovey, hanging friends. Because remember, when we talked about Jacob and Esau, is that there are some people who are deceased, who are no longer around, that you can't go back to. Does that mean that you have not forgiven them? Yes. It's like, I'll give a prime example. Me and my dad, everybody who knows me know we don't have a great relationship. Have I forgiven him? Yes. Are we buddy? No. But if push comes to shove and he knocks on this door, I'm going to let him in because we have a relationship. It's injured, but we got a relationship, and each day it gets better. Because I remember the time I wouldn't say anything at all to him, but recently I saw him and I went up to him. So the sting of it is getting doesn't catch me the same way as it once did. Now, perhaps each person is going to be different. I believe that people say, well, what would Jesus do? Well, the truth of the matter is that's exactly why Jesus came, because he knew that we could not do exactly what he did.
Amen.
And so every day it is a process. It is a process. We can, say these, quote the scriptures. We can say, well, it's not, you haven't truly done it, but I believe it is a process, and every day gets better than the day before.
Okay.
Thoughts, Fred?
Say again?
Oh, I saw you came up on the screen. I thought maybe you had something to say.
No, I think that was me. I was just trying to, and maybe I misunderstood what Tanya was saying, that she said she's just done with them, period.
Mm-hmm.
And so
No, you heard me right.
No,
you heard me right, Denise.
no, okay.
You did. And but when Michelle came in, she really put it exactly how I should have. I may be cordial and all of that, but you probably aren't going to come over for dinner and stuff like that. Michelle really put it a lot more precisely.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So as you can see, this is an ever ongoing subject that will be forever ongoing. But it's an individual thing, and for me, it's a process. It's a process. And what's so good about it is that in the process, God, he works on you as an individual, and strengthens you to be able to do what needs to be done when the time comes. And I will bet my bottom dollar, even in the scenario that LaTanya talks about, that those same people, if they knocked on her door and needed something, that she would do it. But does that mean that you got to be at my house every day? That's another story. Okay, good discussion. So, as we continue with Joseph, we look in verse 2. It talks about Joseph had integrity. Joseph was learning how to care for the sheep from his brother, and he got his start of being a servant. Now, taking care of sheep was not an easy job. It was a dirty job. But Joseph started at the bottom, and we look at, he was 17 years old while passing the flock with his brothers while he was still a youth, along with the sons of Bilhah and Zebulun. Those were it said his father's wives, but it was his concubines. And Joseph brought back a bad report about them to their father. Now, Joseph, as a teenager, 17 years old, he came back and told on his brothers. In other words, he was a tattler. And so the question is, at 17 years old, did Joseph have the right to tell on his brothers? Now, some people said that, he had common sense and he had discernment, and whatever his brothers were doing must have been mighty wicked, or he would not have mentioned it to his father. But he came back and he told them, his father, what was going on, and it caused problems in the family. If you continue to look at it, say, now Israel loved Joseph. And remember, Israel is Jacob, loved Joseph more than all his sons, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a multicolored tunic, or we say coat. His brothers saw that his brothers saw their father loved him more than all his brothers, and so they hated him and could not speak to him on friendly terms. Now, this was blatant favoritism. And again, we've talked about this. Where have we talked about this favoritism? It was in the story of Jacob and Esau. Both of the parents favored one child over the other because that child resembled them the most. Now, I know we have debates and all of this about, do parents favor their children? Is it one that they love the most and all of this stuff? Well, the truth, and people say, well, we like a parent would say we love them all the same. There's not one over the other one. But as we saw with Jacob and Esau, it's a human factor that people who resemble us, who act like us, who do things like us, we take a liking to them. Even on the jobs, bosses tend to hire people like them. We tend to become friends with people who are like us. And I believe this was the case with this that we've seen all throughout these stories that we've been reading and studying and talking about. And it says that Jacob was an old man when he had Joseph. Now, Joseph was not the baby. Benjamin was going to end up being the baby, but he said he was an older person, and to make matters even worse, Joseph was the son of his favorite wife, Rachel. And the human heart sometimes plays trick with the mind and makes people do strange things. Now, you parents on the line, any comments about that? This favoritism thing, or
Well, I would say for me, in terms of, there is no favoritism. When you say, when I say I love them no less or no different, I can't say I love them the same. And what I mean in this aspect is that I have two daughters, and they're two totally different daughters. They're not the same, so I can't treat them the exact same because they're two different people. A point in case, my oldest daughter is more like me, but heightened. And what I mean by that is, you know, how they talk about, you know, every generation is, you know, wiser and different or whatever. Well, at the age that I was with, that she is now, I was already a mother, and I had a sharp tongue, but Maya has a 5'5" sharp tongue. You know, so it's different. So the things that I have to say, what I say to her, to Maya, it doesn't even get to the point with Michelle, because Michelle is a different mild manner in situations. She'll get to a point where she gets worked up and she'll just cry. She won't say anything back or whatever. So it's not that I treat them any different, and I do love both of my daughters. I can't imagine what my life would be without them. But to say that you love them the same, I think that's an untruth. Well, and what I mean in terms of, because they're two different people, so you have to treat them differently. But my love isn't different in terms of how I love my children, but they're not treated the same because they're two different individuals. And I think, and it's the interesting part too, that, you know, where you say you gravitate to people who are like you, and that's kind of like even in relationships, you gravitate in, I mean, male-female relationships, those kind of relationships, marriage, you gravitate to people who have some like mind or some like kind. But then you find that when you have, for me at least, when you have children, the very things that you didn't like in your spouse or whatever, your child is comprised of both of you, of you and him. And so those very things, sometimes when you see them in your children, you butt heads, because those are the things that you were butting heads in with your spouse, or say even your spouse, the male, saying the same thing, the things that maybe he didn't like the most in me. There are some things that in our child that comes out that they butt heads on those kind of issues. So they're different. You treat them differently because they're different people, but you love them. I think I said it wrong. I love them the same, yes, but I treat them differently because they're two different people. Not a favoritism thing, but I treat them for the people that the people and the personalities that they are.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Thank you, Michelle, for your honesty.
I agree with what Michelle is saying. Of course, I mean, those that know me, you and Tanya and Michelle, I have a son, and when my daughter passed away, my son said, he told his wife that he thought that me and my mom would wish it was him instead of her, because she never gave me any problems. But from the time he was 14, you know, he was always in and out of trouble. And I had to explain to him that that didn't make me love him any less. But your children will think that there's favoritism, even when there's not. And I think that's partly because, you know, he was locked up for the first 9 years. Then he came out, was doing okay. Then after 3 years, he was locked up again. And, you know, he's getting ready to get out again. But it doesn't change my love for him. I just don't like the things that he does.
I think that what I believe is Gloria just said really resonates. And Michelle, the person that spoke just a moment ago, I have two boys. They daylight and dark different. I love them both the same. I like them both the same, but I don't treat them both the same, and I don't like being with them both the same. And so that's different. But it's a crazy thing. I don't know. I don't have favorites, but I do love them both equally.
Okay. Thank you, Fred. Anyone else who's been as a child who may have thought that you were being treated differently?
Now, for me, I didn't feel like I was treated differently in terms of badly, but my sister that's next to me in age, she's 9 years older. My siblings are way older than me, but my sister closest to me in age is 9 years older than me, and she said, I remember her saying this. Oh wow! And this is probably a good example of real forgiveness. I didn't even think about this story, but I'll tell you this in a minute. So I remember she said to me a few years back, she said, I ain't never liked you. You was always different. You know, you always thought you was better. You never got in trouble. You never did this. And mom and them always did this for you, always did for that. When you came along, they kicked me to the curb. All of this stuff, I had no idea that she felt this way. I mean, this was a sister that taught me how to tie my shoes, you know, play teacher with me, all that. I had no idea till 2 years ago when she said this to me. So my oldest sister passed just in February of this year. And that sister that was next to me, she was making me mad. She wouldn't come and see my sister. She said some mean things when I told her I needed her to feed my sister while I go do this. Tell me, what make you think I want to feed her? I was angry with her. Like, if she had said 2 words, God is my witness. If she had said 2 more words, I would have put her lights out. I don't mean kill her, I just would have knocked her out. But it's so funny how things happen. My sister was dying, and that sister had to go and stay with her because I was in Atlanta and I couldn't get a plane out that fast. So she stayed with her that night, and when she woke up that morning, she had passed, and my sister called me. And during the process of her calling me, it was still kind of ugly. But the interesting thing, when I was home for the 4th of July, my sister came over to my best friend's house, and we started talking, and she said, Michelle, you know, have you ever seen that Geico commercial with the, I think it's Geico, with the oil and the ducks? And the duck, they was trying to get the oil off the ducks, but they was just stuck. They just kept on walking and couldn't get it off. I said, no, I never saw that commercial. She said, well, you got to see it because that's exactly where I've been in my life. I was just stuck in a dumb place, and I am so sorry. And my sister and I, we actually talked. Like, it was her birthday the other day, and you know, we had communication. She's gonna come down here and visit. So I never thought about that in the forgiveness thing, because I was really done with her. Like I said, I'm telling you, if she had said 2 more words, I was waiting to get her. But I said all that to say, I didn't feel that my parents treated me, my grandparents or my aunts and uncles or everybody treated me differently. I was so young, and they were like, my oldest sister was already 18. She was already 14 when I was even born. So by the time I was 4, she was already out of the house. And then I would live with my grandparents. So I never felt like they treated me differently. I just felt like that was like the norm. So I had no idea that she had all of that pent up, you know, jealousy inside. And like I said, this was 2 years ago. I'll be 49 years old in less than a month. So for 47 years, she had carried that jealousy or whatever towards me because she felt like I was treated better. But as a little kid, I was a good kid. I didn't want to do anything wrong because I had seen the choices that my